Happy Hanukkah to you. And I have a couple of interesting articles talking about bookstores in New York, and we can get started on that and read it. One, let's see this one here. It's about Tome. This is in the Friday, December 16th, 2011. We had a first part of this about this Aurora Anaya Serda, who ran a 40-day campaign to raise $40,000, picked up the keys for her new East 103rd Street store, La Casa Azul, on Saturday. She was collecting money to have a bookstore. Anyway, we can read the story here. Then there's another story about the St. Marks Bookshop. Anyway, here it's about Tome. Uptown Bookstores are growing, by Michael J. Feeney, New York Daily News. Bookstores through the city are closing, but in Upper Manhattan they're growing. It took 5 years, but Aurora Anaya Serda's dream of opening a bookstore in East Harlem has come true. Anaya Serda, who ran a 40-day campaign to raise $40,000, picked up the keys for her soon-to-be bookstore on Saturday. And the popular Word Up bookstore in Washington Heights is trying to extend its life indefinitely. Quote, "I've been dreaming of this moment for 5 years," said Anaya Serda, who has been on mission to bring a bookstore to the El Barrio since she noticed the lack of venues for literary lovers when she moved to the neighborhood from Los Angeles. She's looking at cutting the ribbon on her new East 103rd Street store, La Casa Azul, in the spring. Meanwhile, throughout the city, bookstores are closing up because high rents and e-books have put many shops out of business, the Daily News has reported. The Seaburn Bookstore, the only independent bookshop in Astoria, Queens, is set to close. Books in the Hood, the last independent bookstore in the South Bronx, will also be shutting its doors with a farewell party on Saturday. And St. Marks Bookshop in the East Village was also on the verge of closing this year, but has managed to stay open. We have an article on that, too. Uptown, the bookstore owners are trying to come up with other ways to use their stores, running events that go beyond reading, from knitting circles to film screenings. Word Up organizers are negotiating to remain at Broadway and West 176th Street for several more months. Volunteer Veronica Liu told the News. The community bookshop, originally planned as a one-month pop-up store, has occupied space along the busy strip since June. Liu said the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance is negotiating with the landlord, Vantage Properties, to keep the bookstore around permanently. For the last 5 months, Vantage has provided the space rent-free, but that will change under the new agreement. For the first time, Word Up will have to pay rent. And the shop is having a, quote, rent party Saturday at the bookstore to help pay the first month of bills. While Liu was saddened to hear about bookstore closings throughout the city, she was confident that Word Up could survive. Quote, "It doesn't concern me that much right now," she said of the closings. Quote, "I think it helps that it's a multi-functioning space. It's a bookstore in name, but we've had knitting circles, kids, crafts, and film screenings at the bookstore." Liu also credits the store's prime location, quote, "in the center of the neighborhood and the lack of any other community space. School-aged children frequent the shop, and hundreds of performers have hit their cozy stage for showcases. The two newcomers joined 3 other bookstores uptown, U-Man Bookstores and Sisters Uptown Bookstore in Harlem, and Deja Vu Book Lounge in East Harlem. Deja Vu, which specializes in urban Latino novels, has only been open since the summer. Anaya Serda is also certain her shop, which received online donations from more than 400 people, can make it in an era of ebooks, the Nook and the Kindle. She's also planning to host literary events, meetings, and performances. Quote, "I'm very optimistic. it's going to be long-lasting. I'm very optimistic it's going to be long-lasting, Anaya Serta said, adding she's closely monitoring the trends. Quote, it's going to be a community space. This is the revival of bookstores. So that's Aurora Anaya Serta. So she says it's going to be a community space. This is the revival of bookstores. That's a very nice. Hopefully that'll be the case. We have also here in this the New York, December 19th to 28th, 2011. We have this here, the St. Mark Bookshop Lives. We spoke about that in a different video. This is Allen Ginsberg met Philip Glass at St. Mark's Bookshop. Anyway, we'll read this. The St. Mark's Bookshop Lives. This is one of the reasons to love New York. That's the St. Mark's Bookshop Lives. St. Mark's Bookshop is hardly a typical bookstore. It's where Susan Sontag used to spend most of her Sunday evenings with Annie Leibovitz, and where Allen Ginsberg met Philip Glass. Even odder is its landlord, Cooper Union, an elite college that, so far anyway, is free to students. So Cooper Union, an elite college, enticed the bookstore over to 3rd Avenue 20 years ago and has occasionally helped out in crisis years. This summer was different. Co-owners Bob Content and Terry McVoy realized they were in deep trouble with sales down 35%, an insurmountable debt, and a full-time staff of 9 that had to be laid off. They asked Cooper Union for a $5,000 rent reduction, but the college's new management, facing its own dire straits, it may soon charge tuition, refused. But neighbors matter. In this case, friends and neighbors like Michael Moore, Salman Rushdie, Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer, a Dog and East Village activist committee, and 44,000 people who not only signed an online petition but actually bought lots of books. By Halloween, customers and activists, famous and obscure, powerful and not, had signed their names, made high-profile appearances, and shopped enough to lift autumn sales 50%. Books by Patti Smith and Haruki Murakami were big hits, along with the post-structuralist philosophy for which the store is famous. And at the 11th hour, the borough president stopped in and negotiated a smaller rent reduction with Cooper Union. Stringer told Content he intervened after witnessing the end of Coliseum Books and the Upper West Side Shakespeare and Company. Quote, he felt that whole area lost part of its soul, Content says. Quote, and he didn't want to see that happen again. Coliseum Books, that was a very nice bookstore to go to on the Upper West Side. So that closed about 2 years ago. Anyway, quote, you wring your hands when something disappears, says Content. Quote, well, here was the case where maybe there was something to be done, and we did it. That's by Boris Kashka. So let's say that again. You wring your hands when something disappears, says Content, one of the owners. Well, here was the case where maybe there was something to be done, and we did it. So anyway, in the meantime, they saved the St. Mark's Bookshop. And we'll see how things go there. Yeah, so that's good news on the bookstore front. We have an interesting book here, too, Joan Didion Blue Nights. This is a good book here. Joan Didion Blue Nights, author of The Year of Magical Thinking, Blue Nights by Joan Didion. She wrote a lot of various books. She wrote something called Play It As It Lays and Slouching Towards Bethlehem. This is the story of her and her daughter. This is her daughter. who unfortunately passed away at the age of 39. She was her daughter. This is talking about her and her life, her daughter and her husband. I can read from the page here, from the front page. From one of our most powerful writers, a work of stunning frankness about losing a daughter, richly textured with bits of her own childhood, as married life with her husband, John Gregory Dunn, and daughter, Quintana Roo. This new book by Joan Didion examines her thoughts, fears, and doubts regarding having children, illness, and growing old. Blue Nights opens on July 26, 2010, as Didion thinks back to Quintana's wedding in New York 7 years before. Quote, today would be her wedding anniversary. This fact triggers vivid snapshots of Quintana's childhood in Malibu, in Brentwood, at school, in the homely hills. Reflecting on her daughter, but also on her role as a parent, Didion asks the candid questions any parent might ask. Didion asks the candid question any parent might about how she feels she failed, either because cues were not taken or perhaps displayed. Quote, how could I have missed what was clearly there to be seen? Well, unquote. Finally, perhaps we all remain unknown to each other, seamlessly woven in our incidents Didion sees as underscoring her own age, something she finds hard to acknowledge, much less accept. Blue Nights, the long, light evening hours that signal the summer solstice, quote, the opposite of the dying of the brightness, but also its warning. So this is Blue Nights. What does Blue Nights mean? What does the title mean? The long, light evening hours that signal the summer solstice. Quote, the opposite of the dying of the brightness, but also its warning. Unquote. Like the year of magical thinking before it, Blue Nights is an iconic book of incisive and electric honesty, haunting and powerfully moving. Let's see about Joan Didion. One moment. Let's make this. So we'll read a little bit about Joan Didion. Joan Didion was born in California and lives in New York City. She is the author of 5 novels and 8 previous books of nonfiction. Her collected nonfiction, We Tell Ourselves Stories in Order to Live, was published in Every Man's Library in 2006. Joan Didion's After Henry, A Book of Common Prayers, Democracy, The Last Thing He Wanted, Miami, Political Fictions, Run River, Salvador, Where I Was From, The Year of Magical Thinking, and The Year of Magical Thinking, the play, are available in vintage paperback. So here we have Joan Didion Blue Nights. I haven't really bought too many books lately, but this book I thought I would get. Actually, I read an article on this in, I think it was New York Magazine, and I thought this would be a good, interesting book to get. Anyway, we have here Joan Didion Blue Nights. And so we have the various things. Good luck to those 2 bookstores. Matter of fact, we have Joan Didion's signature on here. This is Joan Didion, Blue Nights, Alfred A. Knopf. It might be an interest. If this is your kind of interest, it might be good for you to pick that up. Blue Nights. I might have more on Blue Nights at a future time. Thank you very much. All right. See you soon.